Nithyanandam, welcoming back all the viewers watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, and the various social media channels. We would like to take a few minutes to introduce one of the greatest projects that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has revealed, the Ishanya project. Humanity, as a modern society, we have reached the state where we can provide food, clothing, medical care, and all the basic needs for the population of 8 billion people. But unfortunately, the decision makers have not reached the conscious level to make the humanitarian decisions for providing these basic needs for all the 8 billion people. The survival needs for these 8 billion people don't depend on housing or food or the availability of resources, but rather the conscious level of the decision makers. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has now launched this Ishanya project where Kailasa and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism facilitate the providing of these basic needs. One side, we can see that tons of food are dumped in oceans and in landfills to maintain the steady prices. But on another side, we can see millions who are dying with hunger. One side, we can see that the functioning medical equipment are just put away to acquire new models. But on another side, we see that these medical equipment are the ones that people are needing in many of the countries around the globe. One side, we see that the clothes are just wasted, which are barely worn or just worn once. Whereas we see in countries the people with not even basic clothes, the warm clothing, and basic materials. One side we see the homes are closed for foreclosure and empty and locked away, where another side we can see millions in homelessness. Here we can see just a few statistics about the food wastage and how the food is just getting discarded without being optimally used for the people who actually need the food.
So let us look at some of the facts as Tatwa Maharaj was sharing. Let us look at some of the facts of the food wastage. Literally one third of the entire food that is produced in the world for the human consumption every year, which is approximately 1.3 billion tons of food, gets lost or wasted. Food losses and waste amount to roughly about 680 billion US dollars in industrialized countries and about 310 billion US dollars in developing countries. Over 155 million people in about 55 countries or regions have faced food crisis in 2021. Adding the number has now increased to 265 million due to the COVID epidemic. So as we can see, one side, there is a huge amount of wastage, but the other side, there are millions of people who are having and suffering the food crisis. Even if just one fourth of the food that is currently wasted globally could be saved, it is more than enough to feed over 870 million hungry people in the world. Just one fourth. As Swamiji says, the world has already reached a point where all the basic needs for the world is enough. So all we need to do is the decision makers take the responsible decisions, and that is where the Ishanya projects come through. Over 35 million people have been dying from hunger worldwide. A child dies from hunger every 10 seconds. Poor diets are linked to over 20% of all the deaths worldwide. So you can see how high the statistics are at this given point in time. Let us look at a quick statistic as about the medical equipment wastage. As we can see here, there is about 5.2 billion discarded equipments versus the people who are in need of medical care is over 100 million. So even if we are able to actually just reutilize the wastages that are there, we'll be able to bring over 100 million people out of the poverty of medical care just like that. The US medical waste will attain about 5.25 billion USD by 2027, And among the regulated and unregulated clinical waste, around 80 to 85% of the medical equipment can be reused. They have their standards that is there, but that doesn't mean it has to get wasted. So 80 to 85% of what is thrown away can be reused. Unused supplies in the medical facilities are often discarded unnecessarily rather than being stored for later use, adding even more unnecessary garbage being created away to just landfills where unused medical supplies are wasted. Reprocessing industries saving about 15 million pounds of medical waste from landfills and reducing the hospital costs and surgical centers by over 544 million US dollars. These are all statistics from various articles and references and news that have credible evidences and back producing it. The world's poorest countries are paying some of the highest drug prices, with everyday medicine costing up to 30 times more than those in the rich nations. And half the world, as we know, lack access to even the basic essential healthcare services, with 100 million still suffering and pushed into extreme poverty due to health expenses.
The next, let us see some statistics about the cloth wastage. Here we can see that almost 59,000 tons of waste clothes are being produced by the nations where the clothes are just used only once or just used few times and thrown completely. And this recycling can provide the clothes, provide the basic needs for almost all of the 8 billion people. Here we can see the statistics where almost 100 billion garments are produced each year, with over 33% going to the landfills. Every year, 59,000 tons of used and unsold clothing end up in Chile from all over the world just to be dumped in the ocean. Every 10 minutes, an estimated of 6,000 kilograms of clothing and textiles are dumped in landfills. Almost 1 in 8 children without basic clothes, 1 billion children worldwide are multidimensionally poor without access to basic accessories. Over 22,000 children die each day due to inhygiene around the world. And also, in terms of the vacant homes and shelter, we can see that almost there are 42 million vacant homes, which can give homes to almost 27% of homeless people. These are not just in the United States, but all over the world, where the world has millions of vacant homes, and almost 1 in 10 homes in advanced economies are empty. Here we can see the example of Japan, which has topped a list of the nations with the highest percentage of vacant homes, with 13.6% of its people not lived. And in Canada, there are around 1.3 million vacant homes. There is a 27% increase in homelessness because of the impacts, the economic impacts of COVID 19. And more than one third of all people are facing homelessness, which are women and children. For the last 5 years, core homelessness has been rising year on year worldwide. Homeless people are over 9 times likely to take their own life than the general population. Of course, when you take account of fulfilling the basic needs of the human beings, we can expect risk less crime rate, more an increase in the mental health and physical health of all the 8 billion citizens of the world. 78% of homeless people report having a physical health condition, 44% of them having mental health diagnosis, and 41% use drugs and alcohol to cope with the mental health issues. As the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was mentioning in yesterday's satsang, that the people who are homeless are not harmful, or they are just neglected by the society. And it is time for the affluent communities, it is time for the developed nations to start taking account of these people who are also global citizens, the citizens of the world, and give them the basic needs where they can improve the lifestyle of themselves, which in turn adds to the economy of the country, which adds to the happiness of the communities, which adds to the health of the communities.
As the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has shared, the Kailasa's aim for the Ishanya project is to raise the consciousness level in the world and to bring to the fore the real issues the facing world, and through a specialized process of recycling, facilitating the movement of good quality unwanted items from the haves to the have-nots. This Chaturmasya, which is the 4 months from July to the October 22nd, 2022, alone, 1 crore people should practice Samadhi to raise their consciousness, and 1 crore people should be pulled out of poverty. This is the direct aim of Kailasa and the vision of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism for the Ishanya project. If we have to just look at some of the great benefits from this project, for the donors, it's a great boon to provide to those in need. For the world, recycling removes a lot of hazardous material from the nature, adding to a cleaner environment. And for those in need, millions of people around the world will be alive, not just alive, but raised out of poverty, pulled out of hunger and inadequate health practices due to lack of medical facilities. As we can see, it's a win-win-win situation. Over the last 27 years, Sri Kailasa has built a network of legal entities in over 140 countries around the world, holding charity status in over 118 of these countries. In many countries, Sri Kailasa's entities are registered distributors as well, meaning we can manage the entire process end to end and act as the middlemen to make sure that we are able to receive and distribute it to the people who are in need. So we will be making full use of this network to collect clothing, medical equipment, food material from developed nations, transport them, distribute it to the countries and regions in need, and all the transportation and the distribution expenses will be directly sponsored by Sri Kailasa. Here, we're looking at a brief as to what would be the methodology of this entire project. First would be collecting of the clothing, the medical equipment, and food material from various parts of the world. After which, a professional team of people from the Sri Kailasa would be performing the quality control and the processing of the goods that have been received. After which, it will be shipped to various different countries and regions where people in need are there, and they would be given completely free of cost. So as you can see, these are the various different examples, the various different processes, and the aim of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism through the Ishanya. If you want to contribute to the project, if you want to be part of the project, or if you want to be on the receiver's end, you can head over to go.srikailasa.org/Ishanya, where you can register yourself for these services. Let us now move on to the next segment of today's Guide to the Paramashivoham Level 3 program. After a short break, please stay tuned.
Nityanand, welcoming back all the viewers watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, and the various social media channels. We saw about the Ishanya project, one of the greatest projects by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and how Kailasa is providing the solutions for the basic needs of 8 billion people in the globe. One of the main problems that we humans face in our lives is the poverty, the inadequate funds that we have, the problems in our health, and the problems in our relationships. Today, we will just take you through a few of the statistics about how poverty has affected the globe and how the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has given the solution for everyone to have abundance of not just wealth, but everything in their lives. Today, in the world, about 9.2 percentage or 689 million people to be exact live in extreme poverty on less than $2 a day. Around 413 million people, which is projected, will be living in extreme poverty by 2030. That's 30 million more than last year's projection. 1.3 billion people live in multi-dimensional poverty. This can be whether the inadequate funds or inadequate education or inadequate food or basic needs. This is directly by the statistics from the UNDP, and especially with the COVID 19 pandemic, which has affected many parts of the world, the poverty rate has doubled in many parts of the globe. Especially, we can see in East Asia and Pacific, around 239 million people have been affected. And we can see the statistics where people have resorted to borrowing and relied on the well kept savings which they had and reduced expenditure on non food items where they're focusing just on looking and meeting the basic needs. 27% have even changed their dietary patterns, and 16% have resorted to donations from friends and relatives. 689 million people, as we saw, live in poverty, and children and youth are the ones that account for two-thirds of the world's poor, and women represent a majority in most regions. Extreme poverty is increasingly concentrated in the sub Saharan Africa. About 40% of the region's people live on less than $2 a day. Extreme poverty rates nearly doubled in the Middle East and North Africa between 2015 and 2018 because of the world crisis that was happening and which is still happening. Although countries impacted by fragility, crisis, and violence are home to about 10% of the world's population, they account for more than 40% of people living in extreme poverty. By 2030, an estimated 67% of the world's poor will live in fragile contexts. About 70% of people older than 15 who live in extreme poverty have no schooling or only some basic education. 1.3 billion people in 107 developing countries, which account for 22% of the world's population, live in multidimensional poverty. As the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism says, poverty is not just in money, but poverty accounts for anything that is not abundant in your life. Anything that you are not able to manifest accounts for poverty, which can be as small as poverty in wealth or the poverty in education, poverty in health, poverty in relationships, poverty in your ability to have good mental health and stay happy.
Here, we're looking at some more cases which speak about how billions of people are being pushed into extreme poverty, especially during the COVID 19 pandemic that affected the entire world. It threatens to reverse the years of progress in the fight against the global poverty and the income inequalities. It literally jeopardizes the future of the generation of our very children. The COVID 19 drove an additional 97 million people into extreme poverty in 2020, according to the World Bank estimates. More than a year into the pandemic, the World Bank stresses that there is still much we don't know concerning its impact on the global poverty in 2022. Another quarter billion people will fall into poverty this year, the Oxfam says. And this is, of course, due to the COVID pandemic. The combined hit of the world crisis as well as the COVID pandemic result in a total of 860 million people living below the $2 average per day. And by the end of 2022, or 263 million more people than the projection during the pandemic, before the pandemic, that's equivalent to the entire population of the UK, France, Germany, and Spain combined. All of them are going to be dropping to a less than $2 per day average below by the end of 2022. And as we know, 3.7 million more children are in poverty just by the Jan of 2022. In 2015, the children in Africa accounted for 25% of the global poverty. And by 2030, the children in Africa will account to over 43% of the global poverty. The monthly child poverty rate has increased from 12.1% in December 2021 to 17% in December 2022. As you can see, it is literally just a month away with 5% increase. And this is the highest rate of increase since the end of 2020. The 4.9 percentage point increase in poverty represents 3.7 million more children in poverty. As we can see, the poverty is making continuous rolls and things are only becoming worse and worse. Ishanya project is one of the most powerful and most advanced technologies that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has bringing about to revolutionize this, to bring people out of poverty. At the same time, also raise the consciousness and the awareness of the people. Working poverty affects in as many as 169 million youth in the world. The number is increasing to over 286 million if the near poor are included. About 152 million young workers live in households that are below the poverty line, and they comprise of 24% of all the working poor. So till now, we've looked at various statistics of poverty. And as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has brought out the Ishanya project, where it aims to bring over 1 crore people out of poverty in the next couple of months, Swamiji has also been, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has also been providing solutions for individuals to work on their consciousness to raise the very idea of poverty and to get pulled out of poverty. In the next segment of today's program, we're going to look at some of the solutions given by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, which each and every one of us can work in our very own life to pull ourselves out of poverty. Please stay tuned. We'll catch up again after a short break.
Let us now see the solutions which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has given to overcome poverty in all our lives. So, for creating wealth, we can see that life can be equated to one, which is ability to achieve what you want in the inner and outer world, two, just getting stuck in both the worlds. These are the only two equations which are there. Everybody wants wealth, but they do not increase in their life to the level that they want it. Wealth can be equated to the life energy you express. It is a straight equation. The more that you want to express wealth in your life, the more you put in your life energy to make it happen. Global wealth, creating wealth is an intrinsic part of life. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says in Gita, Gahano Karmano Gatihi, where Bhagavan Sri Krishna explains that the first priority in life should be for moksha enlightenment. When that happens, automatically wealth will generate in all our lives. Creating wealth makes you non-violent because your whole energy becomes creative, and creating wealth brings tremendous interest in life and non-violence.
So, what exactly is wealth? Wealth is not just some object or something that has to be achieved, but wealth is actually an extension of you. If you look at your life, anything that adds to you is wealth. It can be health, it can be your experience of relationships, it can be experience in your career, your mental state. All of these put together is wealth. It's not just something that you need to get. Wealth is not even just money or currency. Money is one type of wealth, currency is one type of wealth, assets that you have is wealth, being alive and active is one kind of wealth. All of these four put together is what is wealth. And wealth, as you know, is neither good or bad, it is just a utility. The wealth consciousness means making a clear decision to break out of the myths and mental patterns that impoverish us and draw us again and again into the poverty cycle. Here we're looking at the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, sharing the deeper truths about how we can manifest wealth and be pulled out of the poverty. In the Paramashivoham Level 3 program, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is going to give all of these as a direct experience where manifesting wealth and abundance in your life would just happen as a very side effect. Whatever is being shown here, till now in today's segment, we have seen two different parts. One, the problems that the current world is facing, and how the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is tackling them in two different fronts. One, on a direct basis through the Ishanya project, where we are taking the Sri Kailasa is taking the efforts and to reach out to the different people and to bring them out of poverty through the physical means. But there is also the second part of it, which is raising the consciousness, which is actually going to give and empower an individual to continue to sustain a life without poverty and raise their life into becoming more and more wealthy. You manifest what you believe, not what you want. You manifest your desire. You don't just manifest your desire, but you manifest what you cognize. And what you cognize and perceive is what becomes a reality for your life. So these are very different truths that have been shared by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism to experience and to create the abundance of wealth in each and every one of our life. So now I would like to take this time once again to invite each and every one of you for the Paramashivoham Level 3 program. Head over to kailasa.org/Paramashivoham, where you can register for this grand event from happening from August 15 to September 4th. And you can experience the one of a kind program and manifest the consciousness of wealth and abundance in your very life. Let us now prepare ourselves to receive the live satsang by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. After a short break, we request each and every one of you sitting all over the world to please stay tuned. Thank you.